What if one day you woke up and realized the United States was no longer the world's leading superpower? Instead, that title had shifted across the Pacific to China. Sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie, right? But in reality, this is a serious question. Global leaders, economists, and even everyday people are beginning to ask, if China replaces the US, is the world ready? Over the last few decades, China has transformed from a largely agricultural society into a global powerhouse. It's now the world's second-largest economy, the biggest trading nation, and a major player in cutting-edge technologies like AI, 5G, and green energy. Meanwhile, the United States, once the undisputed global leader, is facing political polarization, economic challenges, and growing internal divisions. So the question becomes more than hypothetical. It starts to sound plausible. Let's break this down. What would it mean for the world if China took the lead? First, geopolitically, we could see a shift in global alliances. Organizations like the United Nations or the World Trade Organization might see changes in leadership dynamics. Countries in Africa, Southeast Asia, and even parts of Europe that rely heavily on Chinese investments may begin aligning more with Beijing than Washington. China's Belt and Road Initiative is already laying the groundwork for this kind of influence, quietly reshaping infrastructure and diplomacy in dozens of countries. Economically, the US dollar could lose its position as the world's primary reserve currency. Imagine global trade being conducted in yuan instead of dollars. That would affect everything from oil prices to international loans. The rules of international business might lean more toward centralized models favored by China, replacing the open market systems championed by the West. Culturally, the shift would be just as profound. For decades, American values, freedom of speech, democracy, individual rights, have influenced global norms. But China promotes a different model, one centered on collective harmony, economic growth over personal liberty, and state-controlled media. If Chinese platforms like TikTok, WeChat, and Alibaba replace their Western counterparts, the way we communicate, shop, and even think could change. But is the world truly ready for this change? Let's be clear. This isn't about whether China is better or worse than the US. It's about preparedness. Are global systems ready to operate under a different set of rules? Are international laws flexible enough to adapt? Can nations with opposing values cooperate under a new leader? There's also the question of trust. While the US has had its share of controversies, many nations still view it as a relatively transparent system where power is balanced and criticism is allowed. In contrast, China's political structure is more opaque and dissent is tightly controlled. Would other countries be willing to accept this new model of leadership? Or would we see increased global tension, even conflict? The truth is, power transitions don't happen overnight, but shifts are happening, subtly, steadily, and the more we ignore them, the more unprepared we become. So what should we do? Stay informed, ask questions, think critically. The world isn't set in stone, and neither is global leadership. Whether or not China replaces the US, the conversation matters, because it affects all of us. If you found this thought-provoking, consider subscribing to the channel, not just to support the content, but to stay ahead in a world that's constantly shifting. Your curiosity could be your greatest advantage. Don't just watch history happen, be part of the conversation.